Dalam kota-kata denginadum.
So in the realm of sport and exercise psychology, there is a heap of psychological skills that you can use to enhance your performance. And one very commonly used psychological skill in my world of dance that I often see dancers use is imagery. What is imagery? Imagery is when you create or recreate an experience in your mind using all your senses. I'll come back to what I mean by the using all your senses. It's a very self-explanatory skill because it's essentially what it says. It's imagining an experience in your mind. Now, where I see dancers use this most commonly is when they are practicing the piece without actually physically doing it. So you're listening to the music and you're mapping the movements in your head. You're going through the dance right before going on stage or right before coming to class. What you're doing there, a sports psychologist would call imaging. Why do we do that and why does it work? The reason we do that is because it provides the brain an opportunity to go through the movement or the choreography without actually physically doing it. But the reason it actually works can be explained by this thing called the psychoneuromuscular theory. Sounds very fancy, but I promise it's not. What the psychoneuromuscular theory states is that when you imagine or when you image the movement in your head, you're activating the same neural pathways you will use when you physically do the movement as well. What do I mean by that? What are neural pathways? Let's take a step back. So your brain has these cells called neurons, and when you learn a new piece of information or a new movement or whatever it is, these neurons communicate with each other and arrange themselves into a pathway. So it's like da, they, that. This is a new route that you've just learned. Trust me, it's not that simple, but I'm just explaining it that way. And they communicate with these electrical impulses that it's almost like a relay race that happens when you pass the baton on to the next person. So this pathway is what you're going to activate when you physically do the movement. But regardless or not of whether you're physically doing it, so even if you're imaging it, you do activate the same pathway. And very broadly speaking, it's almost as if the brain doesn't know the difference between you physically doing it and you just imaging it, because for the brain, the work is the same. You're activating the same neural pathway, which also tells us why repetition is so vital when it comes to dancing. Each time you take the same route, information starts traveling faster and you can start adding more details to it. So for example, if I were to use an adave, if you notice a child that first learns the seventh adave, they're not going to pick up on details of the side body bend and where the eyes are looking and all of that. They usually first see it as a very macro level. So it's just like the hands going to the side, and then turn, and then down, and then back up. It's the first time they've taken that pathway. But once the large movement is set in, then they start thinking about, oh, this is where I'm supposed to look. Then they start thinking about, oh, this is how the body bends when I do it. I'm supposed to keep my back straight when I bend forward, and those details come in once they've understood the movement on a larger scale. A recent meta-analysis found that imagery combined with physical practice was more effective than physical practice alone. In terms of how do we implement this, or how can we better implement imaging to improve our performance, I won't go into that in full detail today, but I will give like 2 tips based on mistakes that I've noticed that either athletes or dancers make when they do image, and how we can better image. And one is try to incorporate more senses. So what do I mean by that is, when you are imaging, what are you wearing? What are you wearing? Where are you? What does it feel like? So the more sensory input that you put into that image that you're creating in your head, the more vivid it is, and the more vivid it is, the more efficiently your brain stores that information. The second thing is to image in first person. So if you image yourself watching, or if you image what it looks like from a third person as though you're watching yourself, that can be useful in a different context, which we'll discuss later. But if you're trying to image for the sake of registering a particular choreography in your body, then you should image in first person to ensure that you're actually activating the same neural pathways. because watching and actually being the person that's doing the movement is very different things.